Jumping right into the news for this week, I'm going to share my screen so that you guys can see. Okay, so um, had so many like little things come out. Um, I almost got discombobulated for a second, just like with the days and the news because it's been nonstop stuff over the weekend. But it's Monday. Um, we had ISM services data come out today. Great news. And then we're expecting to get Australia's cash rate and their statement tonight. So that'll happen in about 3 hours and 15 minutes. Actually, 3 hours and um, 12 minutes from now. So, um, news that is not on the Forex Factory calendar, news that is impacting the markets, and it didn't only impact our markets, but it impacted markets around the world, which is why I always tell you guys to look at what's going on around the world. Don't just focus on US news, is because Trump went to the hospital, or so. Let me back up. Trump had a positive COVID test and then ended up going to the hospital, was treated with drugs that we already knew were in the treatment lineup for COVID, but also received an experimental non FDA regulated cocktail from Gilead Sciences and from Regeneron. So, whenever we were talking about the companies, it's been about 2 months, 3 months ago, when we were talking about the companies that actually were in the forefront, were front running when it came to government contracts and when it came to actually like having a COVID vaccine. Um, there were 25 companies in the lineup. Gilead Sciences and Regeneron were in the lineup along with Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, Moderna, several other companies that were up there. Um, these two companies have a series of drugs. What brought the staff to actually use these two companies, what brought the staff to choose the particular cocktail they did, don't know. But what we do know is that Trump is now back home. Um, a lot of people are asking, how is he able to go back home so soon? There have been, healthcare professionals like, I've treated patients with COVID. There's no way. He's probably still shedding the virus. And I think one thing we have to realize is that A, is the president. Two, it's not like he's being discharged to just go home into family care or into the care of home health that's going to come see him 3 times a week. No, this, like, for anybody who's ever been inside of the White House, for anybody who kind of knows anything about the White House, that there is a medical wing, there's a medical section of the White House. Um, it's just that when the president needs closer care, when the president needs deeper insight, particular scans and tests and stuff, that is when a hospital is necessary. But to monitor vital signs, to take, any type of drug regimen that he's on, he can do that from the White House. They have fully staffed medical team there 24 hours a day. And I mean, it's a part of continuity of government, and it's also, hey, at least your taxpayer dollars and at least money that has been set aside from the citizens isn't necessarily going to him staying in the hospital longer than he necessarily has to. Kind of going through all of this because the health of the leader of the United States is really important. It's not only important for us, but it's important for other countries around the world. Boris Johnson was one of the first leaders to kind of step forward and say something to Trump in like an official statement. And it didn't really surprise me because of how much they have relied on and depended upon our government during their time of need, starting back in like late 2015, right before they went into the heavy Brexit votes and negotiations around the vote, and then going through all of the mess. They've leaned heavily upon the United States for help through all of it. So it's partly a Obama Trump thing, where they're, expressing gratitude. But at the end of the day, other countries do look to us and depend upon us for leadership, guidance, and for help. The other thing, if you guys are like internationally, if you guys are trading pairs that are not just pairs that we look at on these calls. So if you kind of tend to look at exotic stuff or stocks, the companies that I mentioned, when it was found out that their drugs were being used on the president prior to FDA approval, their stocks went up. A lot of people believe that this will be a step towards getting these drugs approved and used on the mainstream as a treatment for COVID. Also, Friday, Russian markets soared. When our markets were like, oh no, our president's sick, what are we going to do? Like, vice president's going to have to kind of step up and fill in some of the gaps because Trump is at the hospital. Russian markets soared. They loved the news that Trump was sick. Um, the Russian ruble versus the US dollar, that pair just, it had tremendous movement. Russian markets, period, just moved. There were several other markets that moved too. The Korean market moved, the onshore Chinese market moved. So you could kind of tell who was excited about the news and who wasn't excited about the news based on how the markets and how the currencies moved. So, with that being said, those are things that we're going to be paying attention to going into the future, solely because, this is just day number 4/5 for him. um, and it's just a matter of kind of waiting to see what this whole process is going to be like. Also, we're still going to be looking at those markets and looking at our own currency and currency pairs that trade against the US dollar, exotic, and major currencies because of the election. You're going to get a lot of volatility out of this, not only the stock market, but these currency pairs, because if Trump wins the election, I've told you guys before how the market's going to move, and then if Biden wins, the market's going to go the complete opposite direction because we know what the biases are of the market. So those are things we're going to be paying attention to, paying attention to the health of our president, and just paying attention to how the market reacts to news. Something else, I'll just cover some of the other things that aren't on here really quick. A vaccine, getting a vaccine, and having a vaccine available, especially since we're going into the flu season, is going to be really important. The markets are really looking forward to this. Um, and a stimulus package. There's moving baby steps closer to a stimulus package, but we haven't actually gotten one yet. So the market is just standing by, waiting for those things to happen because right now the market movement is just based off of hope and anticipation. If we don't get those things, the market will correct itself. Tuesday, so for tomorrow, back to the Forex Factory calendar. After this Australian news comes out, we're going to get a budget release during London session. It's a little late for news to be coming out, but it will be like about an hour or so into London session start. We'll get a speech from Christine Lagarde. We will get trade balance news from Canada right before New York session opens. Christine Lagarde will be speaking again right before London opens, and then right before New York opens. Um, and then about an hour and 10 minutes after New York session opens, Jerome Powell will be speaking. So if you aren't familiar with looking at speeches, finding links, if you click on the folder and you click on this link right here for Federal Reserve, it'll actually take you to the link where you can watch this live if you want to. Um, excuse me. This is going to be kind of a add-on to a lot of the other speeches that he's had, the testimony that he did with Stephen Mnuchin. So um, there might be a few things that you'll hear that are new because these will be questions that will be asked from the committee. Um, so just pay attention to this news whenever it comes out. I mentioned the times around the market because um, EU is a pair that we look at, and Christine Lagarde is going to be speaking right before our markets open. London session will have already been open for several hours. And then Jerome Powell speaks after the market opens. And we know that the time period of an hour or so before and after the market sessions open, especially when there's a major crossover like London and New York, there's a lot of volatility in the market. And having news like that around the market open is just going to add more volatility. On Wednesday, Christine Lagarde is going to be speaking again. And then we also get Fed minutes from their last meeting. So there's going to be some volatility around those two times as well, especially when those minutes come out. The thing about minutes with no speech is that they're going to be released. So you can literally refresh. You can go to the Federal Reserve website. You click, this link will take you to the place where the speech will be released and shown. If you go right at 2 o'clock, you'll be able to read it. Like literally right at 2 o'clock, it will be there. You'll be able to read it, click on it, download it, read it, see all the charts and everything. That's important because the news channels are going to be releasing summaries because they do get it ahead of time and they're able to print the headlines and stuff that show up on the screen at 2 o'clock. So it's important that you have it in your hands or at least know where to find it so that you can be reading it also, so that then you can know about your news sources, because that's another thing that we kind of talked about in the group chat and a little bit on the Zoom calls, is just making sure you get your news from a variety of sources and that you are getting accurate and dependable news. And if nothing else, you know where to go to. You can go straight to the source to get it. Thursday, we get a speech from the Bank of England governor, and then we also get a speech from the Bank of Canada governor as well. These speeches are going to be happening during their major times. So the speech that's affecting the GBP from the Bank of England is going to be happening right at the beginning of London session. And then the speech from Canada is going to be happening right at the beginning of New York session. We also get unemployment claims coming out at 8:30 as well. So even though it's a pair that we don't necessarily look at, UCAD is going to be a pair that will be volatile during that time. I would wait until this news comes out, just so that you're not caught up in a trade where you get wigged out or you get wigged in and closed out at the same time, which can happen, especially when you have a big news item like unemployment claims and a speech happening at the same time. Even though the speech will have just been starting, it's still this news item here. the unemployment claims for the US that's going to be really driving that news to start. So the other thing with unemployment claims, I mentioned this Friday. It's something that you guys have to just keep on top of and read about because I sometimes miss the little details about it. Corporations who are doing layoff and permanent job cuts, Disney, American Airlines, American Express. Um, there's a lot of companies. I can't even keep like name them all right now. But there have been a lot of companies that have done layoffs, permanent job cuts. Those numbers are going to start reflecting in this week and next week's unemployment claims. Depending on the states that these people lived in, they could possibly be in wrapped into the unemployment claim number that comes out this week. Next week is when you're really going to start seeing more of those people wrapped into the number. It was almost 100,000 jobs, maybe a little bit more, that were lost literally between like Wednesday and Friday of last week from all of these major corporations. Nancy Pelosi is really trying to stop the airlines from going through with their job cuts because they make up a major portion. 17,000 from one company, 38,000 from another, a potential 33,000 from another. So they're hoping to go ahead and get this stimulus package passed so that the airlines can get more money so that they can keep these jobs in place. Because having that much of a job loss, especially at this point in time, is going to be a huge blow to the economy. At some point in time, Congress has to realize that um, even after the political circus of getting through an election is over, um, these are still, people who live in the states that they represent. So there will be aftermath to it if a stimulus package isn't passed and people end up suffering. Um, and the other major news that comes out this week is Canada's employment news. It's almost similar to what we had on Friday. It's very similar to our NFP, except they don't look at wages with this particular number. So they're going to be looking at employment change and the unemployment rate. Um, the news is kind of Canada heavy, kind of heavy on the Euro GBP and the US this week. Um, so just make sure that when it comes to those currency pairs, you're paying attention. All of this matters because they have leaders that are not sick. We have a leader who is sick. And any little slight news item that makes the market feel unsure about his condition or his ability to function at full capacity as our president is going to throw all of this news off, and no one is going to care about unemployment claims or oil, um, which isn't even really highlighted for this week. No one's going to care about any of that stuff. The minutes from the Fed, no one's going to care because everyone's going to be shifting their focus to continuity of our government. So, going to leave it there. I'm going to let Mr. Levels take over. Um, if I have anything else to add, if I think of anything else, I'll drop it in the chat. If I think of something else and it's not on the Zoom call, I'll put it in the group chat. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to Mr. Levels and let him get started.
Appreciate that, Carmen. Good job. Good job.